in the case of this man, Abrego Garcia had been deported. He had lived in Maryland, had been deported to El Salvador, where he's from. That's where Van Hollen is in El Salvador today. What do you make of that? Because we've had so many legal conversations about it. I think this event kind of illustrates in many ways how this is a political story, and a political story that the Trump White House, quite frankly, thinks it has the upper hand in. Clearly, it wants to talk about it. It wants to talk about these issues. I don't know what your view is on it, but I know that the president, at every chance he gets, or the press secretary, or now with Ms. Morin, they want to talk about this person who they allege is a gang member. His family denies it, but they see it, I think, as the other side kind of defending gang members, you know?
Well, you know, I think I leave it up to the audience.
Yeah.
In your heart of hearts, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think of what you've just seen? Now, obviously, state the obvious. Garcia is not the person who killed, raped, and brutalized her daughter.
Right.
He's another fellow from El Salvador in the United States illegally. But that doesn't make him, by association, a brutal murderer. What he is someone who, as far as I know, has no criminal record other than his illegal entry into the United States. And he is a person who was ordered by the Supreme Court of the United States to be returned, and for the government of the United States to facilitate his return. I mean, those are separate issues. You know, I don't want to overly invest in. I don't want to play the game, the Van Hollen game or the Caroline Leavitt game.
Well, that's what it is.
I think
though.
what you have here is
100% a game.
Yep,
You're exactly
it is. Right. The situation is very clear. Supreme Court said one thing. The government now, the Trump administration, has the option of whether or not they are going to agree to follow the order, the dictate, to facilitate the return of this man or not. The fact that he is of a class of people who have committed some crimes that are notorious and horrible. I mean,
Right.
He's a person who should go before a firing squad, not him, but the other guy. But the fact is, it wasn't him. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about whether or not the Supreme Court ruling that he should be returned has the force of law that the President of the United States will obey. If the President of the United States does not, and if the Supreme Court digs in, as I suspect they will, then we will have a constitutional crisis.
Yeah, but that's
on
not
our
what
hand.
Trump wants to talk about, or the White House wants to talk about. They want to talk about these issues that they know they can, or think they can win in the court of public opinion. They don't want to talk about any of the legal issues.
Well, how could they not? This is gut-wrenching. Now let me show you, ladies and gentlemen, as sorrowful as a mom can be. Now, Mom, let's hear this horrible story about another guy, not this guy, but another guy, because we want to justify our draconian response to illegal immigration. Illegal immigration stinks. You know, I understand the causes of it. We all do. But the president and the Trump administration should be given props for shutting off the southern border and stopping the illegal crossings in a way we have never seen. But this is different.
Yeah.
This is not about, it's barely about illegal immigration at all. This is about a person who has been ordered returned to the United States by the High Court of the United States, the highest court in the land, in a 9-0 ruling. Including, that's 5 conservatives, with the 4 more liberal and moderate
Right.
justices.
They said you at least have to try. They basically said you got to facilitate or try to facilitate. The judge in the case says they've done nothing. They've made no effort. And my contention is, from watching all this and kind of observing all of this, is that they have to know that at the White House. I know they're looking at another part of the case. They have to know all of what you've said, but they like the politics of it, and they like that, you know, people like you are coming on TV and hitting them for it because they think that they have the upper hand on that part of it. That's got to be that's the only thing I can think of. Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider, and don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.